My name is Alex, I'm 25 years old, and reside on my family's farm in the heart of Arkansas. I assist in taking care of the property, a small family farm that my parents hope I'll inherit one day. However, my dreams extend beyond the confines of rural Arkansas, especially after a peculiar incident that occurred just last July. During a week-long romantic trip, my parents left me in charge of the farm, along with my two sisters, Crystal and Morgan, our online college courses, and shared desire to escape the farm. Life united us in our quest for something more, yet the harsh reality of farm living, particularly the threat of predators, lurked beneath the surface, both the natural kind and the human variety. One evening, as bedtime approached, Crystal engrossed in her summer courses on her laptop, and Morgan and I relaxing in the living room, an unsettling event unfolded. The vast privacy surrounding our farm seemed a little too much at times, and on this particular night, that sentiment became all too real. The tranquility of the night shattered when our two dogs outside erupted into a frenzy. Something had spooked them, prompting me to investigate. Stepping into the yard, I found both dogs fixated on the crops, barking incessantly. Hushing them, I stood before the crops and heard a distinct human whistling emanating from within the cornfield. This marked my first encounter with a trespasser on the property without my dad's guidance. In a rush, I darted inside to retrieve one of the guns. The dogs resumed barking, and I informed my sisters of the intruder, intending to chase them away. Yet both Crystal and Morgan, with more practical minds, convinced me that venturing into the cornfield at night was a terrible idea. Realizing the potential danger, I abandoned the plan. Returning to the dogs, now barking even more frantically, I aimed the gun into the air and fired a shot, silencing them temporarily. In a moment of bravado, I screamed at the unseen intruder to leave our land, hoping it would suffice. The sisters' laughter filled the air, but it was short-lived as the dogs resumed their frenzy. Armed once more, I headed outside, only to witness a figure about 20 feet from the dogs, standing in front of the cornfield. He looked at me, and I yelled at him, prompting him to flee into the cornfield. Fearful for the safety of the dogs, I brought them inside. Seeking guidance, we called our dad, who urged me to be the protector of the house. He recommended firing another warning shot if the intruder returned. Gradually, we retreated to our rooms, each sister taking a dog with her, and I, with the gun, feeling an undercurrent of unease. Laying in bed with my window open, I heard a whistling outside. Rushing to the window, I spotted a figure slowly walking in the grass, whistling as if taunting us. In a moment of defiance, I fired a shot into the grass near him, purposely missing, but putting an end to his unsettling antics. He vanished from view, and despite the unnerving atmosphere, he did not return. The mystery of the intruder lingered, leaving us with unanswered questions. It could have been a mischievous teen, seeking thrills, or something more sinister. Either way, the incident served as a stark reminder of the challenges that come with farm life, both natural and human-made. I have previously worked as a nurse in various hospitals and facilities. Before joining my current hospital, I had an experience at a geriatric hospital located just 30 minutes from my house. Familiar with working with older patients, transitioning to this environment felt routine. As I began my tenure at the current hospital, you'll soon understand why this became a significant chapter. On the second-to-last shift, unbeknownst to me at the night's start, I found myself working the graveyard shift with a severe lack of sleep. Assigned to the Alzheimer's ward, I had built a rapport with the patients, who seemed to appreciate my presence as a young caregiver. Among the residents, one patient stood out, Elena, On my first night attending to her, she shared unsettling experiences about voices and a mysterious man in black she claimed to see. Despite the eeriness, I empathized with Elena, attempting to calm her fears and help her sleep without resorting to TV out of consideration for the other patient in the room. In the later hours, while stocking supplies in the linen room, an inexplicable occurrence startled me. A feeling of a hand on my shoulder, a jump, and a scream ensued, only to find an empty room. A subsequent encounter with a man dressed in black outside the door intensified the fear, leading to a series of chaotic events. The supernatural events, coupled with Elena's reaction, prompted a change in wards for that night. Overwhelmed by the experience, I decided to leave early and communicated my decision to the head nurse the next day. The encounter left me traumatized, raising questions about the thin line between reality and the unknown. It was during the period before my girlfriend Jenny and I officially started dating that we found ourselves spending a lot of time together. Both avid snowboarders, her family owned a quaint cabin in Vermont, not far from Stowe Mountain Resort. On what marked our 10th or so hangout, she invited me for a weekend getaway to indulge in our shared passion for snowboarding. The journey to her family's cabin was a 5-hour drive, leading us through secluded and winding roads. As we approached her cozy house, we navigated a half-hour stretch of a particularly secluded road, passing occasional driveways leading to properties obscured by walls of trees. Nestled deep in the mountains, the sight of other cars became a rarity, creating an atmosphere of isolation. Many driveways bore no signs of tire marks in the snow, indicating that some houses were vacant, much like Jenny's family's situation. Driving at around 30 mph, Jenny suddenly urged me to slow down as we approached a narrow opening in the trees that would have otherwise gone unnoticed. We traversed a narrow trail in a 4-wheel drive vehicle, leading to a small, snow-covered house that exuded coziness. After parking, we wasted no time turning on the heat and unloading our belongings. Despite the absence of running water, the house provided all the essentials, and her family had stored ample water for necessary tasks. With darkness descending, we prepared a simple dinner, watched a movie, specifically The Pursuit of Happiness, and settled into the warmth of the house. Sleep overtook us at some point during the second film, and we woke early to the chime of our phone alarms, eager to hit the slopes for fresh powder. After a hearty breakfast, I had to venture outside to the outhouse. In my haste, I noticed footprints in the snow, their size leaving me uncertain whether they belonged to boots or animals. Following the trail, I discovered it encircling the house before disappearing into the woods. Jenny, called to examine the prints, speculated they might be from a black bear, common in the area. I completed my task and, dismissing the unusual discovery, we headed to the ski resort for an exhilarating 8-hour run. Post-snowboarding, we dined at a local diner and returned to the cabin, greeted by pitch darkness and falling snow. Igniting a fire and cranking up the heat, we delved into music, drinks, and the inviting warmth of the cabin. Eventually, nature's call prompted a trip to the outhouse. This time, however, I decided to conduct all my business there, given that I was already putting on my boots. As I ventured out into the snowstorm, I closed the door behind me, only to hear the crunching sound of footsteps passing by. I called out to Jenny, but there was no response. Minutes later, as I finished inside, I realized the blasting music had ceased and the lights were out. Armed with my phone's flashlight, I traced fresh footprints in the snow leading to the house. Following the prints, I banged on the door, calling out to Jenny. The door opened abruptly, and I was pulled inside by her, who explained that a man had attempted to open the door. Terrified, she had cut the power and hidden, only revealing herself when she confirmed it was me at the door. She recounted watching a stranger walk past the living room window and, fearing for her safety, had taken swift precautions. Jenny then revealed a secret cellar her father had, containing rifles and a shotgun. In the dark, I retrieved a firearm and we sat in silence on the couch, hesitant to turn on the lights. The closest neighbors were too far away, and the only sound was the snowflakes hitting the ground until the sickening sound of footsteps in the snow returned. Armed and determined, I opened the door, fired 3 shots into the air, and screamed. The footsteps vanished, and we left the next morning, heeding her father's advice to vacate the premises temporarily. Though the night was harrowing, at least we managed a full day of snowboarding. That chilling experience, with its strange twists and turns, became a tale we would recount with disbelief and gratitude for the fortunate outcome. It was late at night, around 14:48, as I drove home from work, taking my usual route through the quiet and somewhat monotonous town. The clock had just struck midnight, and the streets were devoid of activity, surrounded by dense woods on one side and scattered houses on the other. The temperature, a comfortable 75 degrees, prompted me to enjoy the night with the convertible top down. Cruising down a road not far from my house, flanked by a cornfield on one side and a patch of woods on the other, I suddenly heard a blood-curdling woman's scream pierce through the night. It was around 15:15, and I immediately brought my car to an abrupt halt, the echoes of the scream lingering in the air. The town's silence amplified the intensity of the sound, leaving me disoriented about its origin. I strained to discern the direction of the distressing cry. It seemed to emanate from the woods on the left. Determined to help, I retrieved a baton from my back seat and cautiously approached the wooded area. Calling out to whoever might be there, the woman's desperate plea for assistance reached my ears once more. She urged me to hurry, and I ran into the woods, pushing aside twigs and bushes in my path. The woman continued to cry out for help at regular intervals, guiding me through the dense vegetation. However, an unsettling realization began to set in. No matter how far I ventured into the woods, her cries remained at a consistent distance. If anything, they seemed unchanged, even as I sprinted in the direction of her screams. Desperation and unease washed over me. In an attempt to locate her, I implored her to provide a more precise location. Yet, the pattern persisted. 5 seconds after my plea, she would once again scream for help. Feeling an increasing sense of danger, I abruptly halted and turned back, retracing my steps to the safety of the road. As I ran back, the woman's cries echoed behind me, maintaining the same distance throughout my retreat. The flashing headlights of my car came into view, and I quickly got in, accelerating away from the eerie scene. Disturbed and frightened, I immediately dialed 911 to report the incident to the authorities, opting not to stick around for any potential investigation. A week later, a disturbing revelation unfolded on the news: the discovery of a deceased woman in her 30s in the woods. A hiker with his dog stumbled upon the lifeless body, and eerily, no signs of foul play were evident. The chilling detail that haunted me was the proximity of the reported location to where I had heard the mysterious screams. The vastness of those woods left me with an unsettling question. Had I unwittingly stumbled upon the scene of a tragedy, or was something more sinister at play? I used to work as a night restock worker at a supermarket in a somewhat rural town called Great American. It was the largest and most prominent supermarket in the area. My shift would begin as soon as the store closed at 10 p.m., lasting until 3 a.m. The routine involved restocking shelves and organizing everything for the next operating day. I had the keys for after-hours access, and I typically worked with a partner, either Terry Carter or Alfonso. On this particular night, Terry was scheduled to be my partner. I arrived at the store, letting myself into the back, where the inventory awaited restocking. Using a pallet jack, I brought a load of boxes to the shopping floor, starting with the bread and nuts aisle. About half an hour into my work, I realized Terry hadn't shown up. Wandering to the back area where we left our belongings, I found no sign of Terry. The back door was shut, and the door stopper lay outside, a detail that struck me as odd. I called Terry's name, but there was no response. Concerned, I called him, and he answered, sounding like he was in bed. He explained that he was sick and wouldn't be coming in. The realization hit me. The door stopper wasn't accidentally dislodged. Someone had kicked it. Nobody else was scheduled to work that night. Despite Terry's assurance, a lingering unease prompted me to check the store's back thoroughly, ensuring no one was present. As I continued my work, a loud sound echoed across the shopping floor. This indicated that someone was in the store. My immediate response was to investigate, and as I stood in the middle aisle, I spotted a man dressed in black at the far end of the dairy aisle. He walked past, looking down in my direction. My heart sank, and I called out loudly, "Excuse me." Speeding down the aisle, I noticed him waiting at the end, facing me. When he saw me, he walked out of sight, prompting me to run after him. However, each attempt to engage with him resulted in him vanishing behind shelves. Feeling increasingly unsettled, I decided to call the police. I waited in my car until the officer arrived, and together we patrolled the store. We found the man at one of the aisles, standing there, seemingly playing a game. The police officer commanded him to come, and he complied, smiling creepily and continually looking at me. In handcuffs, he spoke few words, claiming he was looking for a snack. As the police officer led him outside, the man maintained a menacing smile, licking his lips and casting a threatening glance in my direction. After that incident, I resumed my work, vowing never to leave any doors open again. The strange encounter with that man lingered in my memory, a chilling reminder of the unnerving moments that could unfold during the quiet hours of the night. A long time ago, approximately 8 years back, two friends and I, Jake and Chris, engaged in a foolish endeavor. While James is no longer part of our close circle, Chris and I occasionally revisit the tale. At that time, we were 19 years old, residing in a small town in New Jersey, surrounded by numerous vacant houses. Atop a hilly road, near our residences, stood an abandoned church, known to the locals for years. In our youthful pursuit of thrill and mischief, we hatched a brilliant plan to bring a Ouija board to the church one late October night, embracing the spooky season. Chris had the Ouija board stashed in his closet, and after picking up James, I drove the three of us to the church. Due to the blocked-off road leading to the church, we had to park on the side and proceed on foot, using minimal flashlight to avoid unnecessary attention. However, upon reaching the top of the hill, we all switched on our flashlights. The abandoned church, surrounded by woods on all sides, bore witness to countless break-ins and was adorned with graffiti. The front door, already slightly ajar, required joint effort to open due to scraping against the floor. Once inside, we explored the eerie interior with our flashlights, ensuring we were alone. Chris set up the Ouija board, producing 3 candles from his backpack to enhance the experience. Placing the candles in a triangle around the board, he lit them, and we turned off our flashlights, creating an eerie ambiance. The planchette started moving as Chris initiated the session with cliché Ouija board questions. Laughter ensued, suspecting one another of playfully manipulating the planchette. However, the atmosphere shifted when we heard a distinctive crack emanating from the altar of the church, akin to a large piece of wood breaking. Startled, we aimed our flashlights in that direction, finding no one. Despite the unsettling noise, we persisted with the Ouija board session, taking it more seriously after the unexplained sound. Suddenly, another noise erupted from the altar, prompting us to shine our lights in that direction. Before we could investigate, a rock the size of a golf ball landed on the Ouija board, startling all three of us. Fearful and unnerved, we hastily abandoned the church, leaving the Ouija board and candles behind. Running down the hill to my car, we entertained the notion of being pursued and didn't linger. I drove us back to James's house, where we sat in the car for a prolonged period, reflecting on the bizarre occurrence. Sean, who held strong religious and superstitious beliefs, insisted we had encountered a spirit. In contrast, I entertained the notion that another person might have been present in the church, equally chilling. The following day, Sean and James returned to retrieve the Ouija board, only to find it missing, while the candles remained untouched. Alarmed by the disappearance, they swiftly left the premises. To this day, it remains the single most frightening experience of my life. Several years ago, I found myself working the night shift at a gas station due to financial constraints, juggling it as my second job. This routine persisted for a few months, and it was during my second or third month that a peculiar individual began frequenting the store consistently around 2 a.m. This guy stood at about 6 ft with long, stringy hair. His ritual involved buying a tall boy and departing. However, one night, his routine took an unusual turn. After purchasing his usual tall boy, he engaged me in conversation, asking for my name. I responded with Rob, and he peculiarly repeated it, laughing to himself. This man, clearly inebriated, cracked open his drink and exited the store, muttering to himself. Curiosity got the better of me, prompting me to check if he had been drinking and driving on previous visits. I observed him leaving the store, walking out of sight beyond the gas station property. Oddly, he never bought gas, only alcohol. Subsequently, I encountered him regularly, sometimes visibly more intoxicated than others. He'd occasionally lean on a shelf, silent and staring into space, always greeting me with a casual, "Hey, Rob." One night, as he leaned on a shelf, I finally asked for his name. After a brief pause, he responded with, "Bob." I couldn't shake off the feeling that Bob was a generic fake name. Nevertheless, I inquired about his work, triggering a loud, unsettling laugh. He claimed the government had unjustly deprived him of his job. Despite his angry demeanor, he bizarrely stated, "I like you, Rob. You seem like you know what you're doing," before leaving. His visit ceased for over a week, a noticeable absence considering his regularity. Bob always emanated an off-putting and mildly creepy vibe. One stormy night, with fewer customers due to the weather, I was startled by the entrance ding, expecting Bob, but seeing a much more disconcerting version of him. Drenched from head to toe, he stood by the door, angry and fixated on the wall. Inquiring about his well-being, he confessed to doing something terrible and urgently needed a place to hide. Striding past me towards the restroom hallway, he vanished behind the wall. Unsettled by his demeanor, I grew increasingly uncomfortable. Subsequently, the lights in the store went out, leaving me in darkness during a storm with an unpredictable, intoxicated man. Using a flashlight, I cautiously navigated towards the inventory storage and the panel board. In the dim light, I noticed 2 ajar restroom doors. Bob was absent from both. As I reached the back room, I heard dripping and the squeaking of wet shoes. Upon shining my flashlight, I discovered Bob lurking in the corner, wide-eyed, and he lunged at me, screaming threats. Managing to push him away, I fled to the front of the store. Bob didn't pursue, allowing me to grab my rain jacket and escaped to my car. Dialing 911, I reported the incident and waited for police assistance. The officers found Bob hiding in the back room, exhibiting erratic behavior. I later learned that the man known as Bob was actually named Martin, responsible for brutally murdering his ex-wife on that same night. Following this traumatic experience, I vowed never to work another night shift again. Back when I was 19 years old, I held a part-time job at a nearby pizza place to cover my expenses for food and gas. The tasks were typically straightforward: take the order, pack the food, place it in a bag, and deliver it to the given address. This routine had always been mundane, and I never encountered anything out of the ordinary. Tips ranged from $3 to $5, occasionally reaching $10 or more from more generous customers. On this particular day, I received an order for a chicken parm hero and a regular slice, a relatively small request that usually resulted in lesser tips. However, I had no control over the deliveries assigned to me. As I made my way to the given address, I realized it was on a dead-end block with a distinct rural atmosphere. The houses had a quaint charm, with one standing out due to an RV parked on the grass, accompanied by a small patch of woods. The rest resembled little farmhouses, and the house I sought was oddly situated next to an abandoned one with overgrown vegetation. Upon reaching the address, I discovered a small, peculiar house with an extensive property. It seemed deserted, with all lights off, and the front door slightly ajar. Strangely, I heard the faint sound of a piano being played, as if originating from a couple of rooms away. Knocking and ringing the doorbell yielded no response, and the piano's muffled melody continued. Feeling uneasy about entering, I circled the property to the backyard, discovering a chaotic scene with scattered items and a broken, rusty chain-link fence. Approaching the back door, I knocked loudly, peering through the glass to witness what seemed like a disorderly storeroom. Receiving no answer, I retraced my steps to the front and called a colleague at the pizzeria to confirm the address. After verifying, I hesitantly pushed open the front door, the eerie piano music persisting. Announcing the pizza's arrival, the piano ceased briefly, only to resume shortly after. Walking toward the music, the musty and unpleasant smell inside intensified. As I reached the foyer, a sense of discomfort overwhelmed me, and I decided not to venture further. Yelling towards the front door, the music abruptly stopped, leaving an unsettling silence. I called out again, and a voice from another room requested me to bring the delivery inside. I cautiously proceeded through the living room towards the dining room, expecting to encounter the customer. Upon peeking into the dining room, I noticed the piano unattended and the room empty. A voice from another room directed me to proceed, but my instincts kicked in, urging me to retreat. I quietly returned to the front door, shut it behind me, and drove back to the pizzeria. Explaining the situation to my boss, he was understanding, especially when the supposed customer didn't call back. Later that night, I researched the address, only to discover that the house had been foreclosed and vacant for months. The realization struck me. I had narrowly avoided a potential robbery or an elaborate prank, orchestrated by someone taking advantage of an unsuspecting pizza delivery guy. We hope you've enjoyed the stories we've presented so far. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on the stories, so feel free to share your feedback in the comments below. Did you feel the suspense? Were the stories thrilling for you? And if you're eager to follow more exciting stories, don't miss the chance to subscribe to the channel. We'll regularly bring you new stories, and we look forward to your participation in the adventure and excitement.